Every time you walk into a crowded room, your brain is silently, automatically running a sorting program.
Oh, absolutely. It's constant.
Right. And that same invisible machinery, like the shortcuts your mind takes just to process a room full of strangers, it's actually the root cause of some of the darkest aspects of human history.
From systemic oppression to, outright genocide.
Yeah. Usually when we talk about human conflict, we look outward, at borders or resources and politics. But today, for you listening right now, we are looking inward at the actual mechanics of the mind.
It really is the ultimate invisible machinery. And uh, because the cognitive processes we're analyzing today are so complex, we're actually adopting a specific dynamic for this deep dive to really pull the concepts apart.
That's right. I am officially playing the role of the student today. So my job is to ask the questions, push back, and just try to make sense of the mechanisms at play.
And I'll be your lecturer, guiding us through the underlying psychology of how people can come to hate one another and how these biases operate in, well, every single one of us.
Consider the syllabus set.
Great. So our primary text for this exploration is section 12.5 of chapter 12 from Psychology 2E. Our mission today is to basically dissect the psychological mechanics of human conflict and understand how the brain tricks itself into sustaining prejudice.
Okay, let's start with the basic terminology. Because I think a lot of us, myself definitely included, tend to use words like stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination as if they're perfectly interchangeable synonyms.
Oh, people do it all the time.
Right. But if we're really analyzing the root causes of conflict, they aren't the same thing at all, are they?
Not at all. They represent three entirely distinct psychological pillars. So you have cognition, affection, and behavior. And a failure to separate those three makes it impossible to understand how bias actually operates.
So while I was preparing for today's session, I kept picturing this process as a funnel.
Okay, a funnel, I like that.
Yeah, like at the top, you have this wide, abstract thought. But then it drips down, gets more concentrated, and eventually squeezes out at the bottom as a physical action against someone. Does that track with the textbook?
That funnel analogy captures the progression perfectly, actually. The widest part of your funnel is the cognitive aspect. This is the stereotype.
Okay.
A stereotype is purely an overgeneralized belief or an assumption about an individual based solely on their membership in a group. It's a mental shortcut.
Right.
So if someone holds the thought, Yankees fans are arrogant and obnoxious, that is the stereotype.
Because my brain simply doesn't have the processing power to evaluate the individual character of every single baseball fan.
Exactly.
Or every single older adult, or every person from a different country. So just to survive the sheer amount of data in the world, the brain slaps this massive low-resolution label on the whole jar.
It's totally an issue of cognitive load. The brain loves efficiency, but, efficiency sacrifices accuracy. So when we move down your funnel to the affective aspect, the thought gains an emotional charge. This is prejudice.
So it's not just a thought anymore.
No, prejudice is a negative attitude and feeling toward an individual based on their group. So moving from the cognitive shortcut, the prejudice becomes, I hate Yankees fans, their presence makes me angry.
Wow. Okay, so the label has transformed into a visceral emotional reaction. I'm not just categorizing you anymore, I'm actively resenting you.
Yeah, and that resentment pushes us to the narrowest, most dangerous part of the funnel, which is the behavior. This is discrimination.
The action.
Right. Discrimination is taking tangible negative action toward an individual because of their group membership. Return to the sports example. The discrimination is, I am actively refusing to hire you or refusing to let you into my establishment because you're a Yankees fan.
Well, the funnel makes sense in theory, but the stakes for you and me and for society at large are obviously much higher than sports rivalries. And Section 12.5 brings in some incredibly stark historical evidence of what happens when that funnel drips into real-world behavior.
The visual evidence is really chilling. There are photographs from 1939 German-occupied Poland showing signs reading, "No entrance for Poles."
Wow.
Alongside other 1939 photographs from Oklahoma showing African-American men being forced to drink from designated colored water fountains.
It's just out in the open.
It is institutional discrimination. It is the behavioral end of the funnel, literally codified into law.
And there was another historical example that really highlighted the absurdity of this machinery. Mary Whiton Calkins.
Oh, yes.
She was a psychology student in the late 1880s. And she wasn't just smart, she was brilliant. She was actually given special permission to attend graduate seminars at Harvard, which was strictly all male at the time.
Right, they made an exception.
And she ended up as the sole student of William James, like one of the most famous psychologists in history. Hugo Münsterberg, another giant in the field, called her one of the strongest psychology professors in the country.
High praise.
Yeah. She objectively passed all the requirements for a PhD.
And yet, Harvard flatly refused to grant her the degree. The administration denied her the PhD solely because she was a woman.
Which is just insane to think about now.
It is, but her story is a perfect clinical illustration of the funnel overriding empirical data. The institutional stereotype that women were intellectually inferior created this prejudiced environment, which finalized in the discriminatory act of denying an earned credential.
Even though she was right there proving them wrong.
Exactly. The cognitive shortcut completely ignored the overwhelming individual merit standing right in front of them.
Okay, so as the student here, let me push back on this a little bit.
Bring it on.
Because it is very easy for us to sit here today, look at the 1880s or the 1930s and point to the obvious villains.
Sorry.
We look at segregated water fountains and Harvard denying degrees to women, and we think, well, society is much more egalitarian now. Are these biases actually still dictating our actions, or are we just studying history at this point?
I get why you'd ask that, but the biases haven't disappeared. They've just adapted. They operate under the radar now thanks to a framework called the dual attitudes model.
Dual attitudes.
Yeah. Human beings essentially run two parallel processing systems when it comes to social attitudes. We have explicit attitudes, which are conscious, deliberate, and controllable.
Okay.
And because holding egalitarian views is socially desirable in modern society, most people show very little bias on explicit measures. So if you're asked, are you prejudiced? Your conscious mind evaluates the social landscape and honestly answers no.
But the funnel hasn't actually gone away. We're just running two sets of books. Like the public ledger looks perfectly clean and balanced, but there's a private, unconscious ledger where all those cognitive shortcuts and stereotypes are still secretly being tallied.
That is exactly it. That private ledger is what we call implicit attitudes. These are unconscious and uncontrollable.
Yeah, what did those show?
Well, psychological measures of implicit attitudes consistently reveal mild to strong biases in almost everyone.
Almost everyone.
Yes. And when those implicit attitudes leak into the behavioral end of the funnel, we see modern manifestations of discrimination that are harder to prove in a court of law, but mathematically undeniable in the aggregate.
So let's pull some of those modern manifestations out into the light, because the textbook gets very specific about how this hidden ledger impacts people today regarding race, gender, and age.
Well, consider the phenomenon often termed driving while black. Statistical data shows black individuals are significantly more likely to have their vehicles searched during traffic stops than white people.
Right.
Similarly, Latino shoppers are disproportionately asked to show formal identification when making purchases compared to white shoppers.
So the individuals enforcing these policies might explicitly claim egalitarian views, but their implicit biases dictate their suspicions.
Precisely.
And there was an anecdote about a mayor in East Haven, Connecticut, that honestly sounded like a movie villain's dialogue to me.
Oh, the taco comment.
Yes. Several police officers in his town had been arrested on federal charges for the harassment and brutalization of Latinos. And a reporter asked the mayor what he was doing for the Latino community that day. And his response was, I might have tacos when I go home. I'm not quite sure yet.
It's hard to hear. But the psychology behind that statement is really fascinating.
How so?
It's not just an offensive comment. It's a profound deflection tactic. By reducing an entire culture to a trivial food item, the mayor's conscious mind is minimizing the severity of the systemic behavioral discrimination happening in his police force.
Wow.
The explicit joke serves as a shield for the implicit bias.
So it belittles the outgroup so he doesn't have to engage with the reality of the discrimination.
Exactly.
And we see a completely different kind of psychological trap when we look at modern sexism, particularly in the workplace. I want to talk about Laurie Redmond's 1998 research on what is called the double bind.
The double bind is a brilliant exposure of how unconscious expectations dictate real-world outcomes. Rudman found that when female job applicants self-promote, meaning they confidently articulate their skills and achievements, interviewers generally rate them as highly competent.
Which sounds like a good thing. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do in an interview, right?
You'd think so. However, those same confident applicants are simultaneously rated as highly unlikable, and they are significantly less likely to be hired.
Wait, really? Because they violated the implicit stereotype.
Yes.
The unconscious ledger says women are supposed to be modest and accommodating. So if a woman acts modest to align with the stereotype, the interviewer thinks she lacks the competence for a leadership role.
Yep.
But if she acts confident to demonstrate competence, the interviewer's brain experiences cognitive dissonance. Her confidence threatens their implicit worldview, which triggers a negative affective response, prejudice. She literally cannot win. The bias is a rigged game.
It is a rigged game. And the rules of that rigged game change depending on the demographic. But the mechanism remains the same. We actually see this across the entire human lifespan with ageism.
Usually we associate ageism with prejudice against older adults.
And the data strongly supports that. There was a massive 40-year global study by Chang and colleagues in 2020 that demonstrated people over 50 frequently face systemic ageism. They're heavily stereotyped as being slow, inflexible, or incompetent.
Which leads to actual discrimination.
Right, leads to tangible discrimination in healthcare and employment access. But the psychological mechanism of stereotyping doesn't care about chronological age. It only cares about categorization.
Right, because another study by Raymer and colleagues in 2017 looked at the exact opposite end of the spectrum.
They did.
They found that older workers held deep negative stereotypes about younger workers, viewing them as inherently irresponsible, entitled, or incompetent.
Which proves that the human brain will turn absolutely any demographic into an outgroup, if it serves a purpose.
Okay, lecturer, here is where I get incredibly frustrated as a student.
What's the frustration?
If these implicit biases are constantly humming in the background, making us assume the older applicant is slow, the younger applicant is lazy, or the confident woman is unlikable, how do they survive contact with reality?
That is the big question.
How do we trick ourselves into believing a stereotype is true when a living, breathing human being is standing right in front of us, actively proving it wrong?
Well, we sustain the illusion through two highly effective psychological mechanisms: the self-fulfilling prophecy and confirmation bias. The brain doesn't just passively observe reality, it actively manipulates reality to ensure its pre-existing stereotypes are validated.
Okay, let's start with the self-fulfilling prophecy. This implies that my internal, unspoken expectation of you literally alters your physical behavior.
It does. Let's look at the foundational 1968 study by Rosenthal and Jacobson. They tested this in a classroom setting. When teachers were led to believe that certain disadvantaged students had immense hidden potential, even though those students were chosen entirely at random, those specific students actually achieved higher grades by the end of the year.
Wait, how? Did the teachers just grade them easier because they thought they were smart?
No, the mechanism is much more subtle than that.
Yeah.
The teachers' high expectations unconsciously altered their behavior. They exhibited warmer body language, they gave those students more time to answer questions, and provided more detailed feedback.
Oh, wow.
And the students internalized that warmth and investment, which increased their confidence and effort, ultimately resulting in the higher grades. The expectation manifested the reality.
Okay, that is a positive outcome, but how does this mechanism reinforce a negative stereotype? If I hold a prejudice, how do I force someone else to confirm it?
Let's put you in the room of a 2002 study by Habel and colleagues. Imagine a hiring manager holds an implicit stereotype that gay individuals are incompetent. An openly gay applicant walks in for an interview. The manager's brain expects incompetence. And because of that hidden expectation, the manager unknowingly alters their behavior. They create psychological friction.
Like what?
They give shorter responses, they avoid eye contact, their body language is closed off and cold.
Well, if I am the applicant sitting in that chair and the person across the desk is physically recoiling, staring at the wall and giving me one-word answers, my anxiety is going to spike.
Naturally.
I'm going to stutter, I'm going to withdraw and just try to get out of the room as fast as possible.
You withdraw. And what happens the moment you leave the room? The hiring manager reviews the interview, reflects on your stuttering, your brief answers, and your defensive posture, and the manager concludes, "See? I knew it. This applicant is cold, nervous, and totally incompetent."
Unbelievable. So the manager's bias created the hostile environment, which forced the applicant to act defensively, which the manager then used as empirical proof that the bias was correct all along.
Exactly.
The brain is the dealer, and the dealer always wins.
It ensures it wins by layering on the second mechanism, which is confirmation bias. Whiton and Johnson-Laird explored this cognitive blind spot.
Right.
Confirmation bias is our brain's tendency to obsessively seek out and pay attention to information that supports our existing stereotypes, while simultaneously filtering out or ignoring any information that contradicts them.
So, to bring back my analogy of running two sets of books, confirmation bias is the corrupt accountant.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it.
If we go back to that job interview, let's say the applicant walked in, gave a warm smile, offered a firm handshake, and delivered a brilliant answer to the very first question. The accountant in the manager's brain literally deletes that data because it threatens the private ledger.
The brain experiences that brilliant answer as a threat to its cognitive stability, so just ignores it.
Wow.
The manager will selectively focus only on the final 5 minutes of the interview when the applicant was stammering and anxious. We meticulously curate our perception of reality, so we never have to admit our stereotypes are wrong.
So, if our brains are this committed to maintaining divisions, where does this desperate need for an us versus them worldview even come from? Why are we fundamentally wired to look around a room, divide people into groups, and then scapegoat whoever isn't us?
The root of this behavior actually lies in how we construct our own identities. We're highly social creatures. The groups we belong to, our gender, our race, our profession, our favorite sports team, these function as our in-groups.
Our tribes, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these in-groups are not just categories. They're the primary source of our self-esteem and our sense of belonging. We draw our psychological safety from them.
There is an image in section 12.5 of very young children playing together, and the caption pointed out that even at that age, they are intensely, acutely aware of their gender in groups and out groups. It's practically baked into our software from day one.
It's a survival mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
An outgroup is simply any collection of people we perceive as fundamentally different from us.
Right.
Because our self-worth is deeply entangled with our in-group, any threat to our ego has to be neutralized. When things go wrong, when the economy tanks, when we lose a job, when we feel frustrated or powerless, we experience a threat to our self-esteem.
And looking inward and admitting our own flaws or failures is psychologically painful.
It's much easier to employ scapegoating. Scapegoating is an ego defense mechanism where the in-group blames the out-group for its frustrations.
Blame someone else so you feel better.
Yes. By projecting the blame onto a marginalized group, the in-group preserves its positive self-concept. The prejudice isn't just hatred, it is a tool used to protect the ego.
I have to be honest, staring at the syllabus, the cognitive shortcuts, the double binds, the self-fulfilling prophecies, the corrupt accountant of confirmation bias, the scapegoating, it feels incredibly bleak.
It can feel overwhelming, yeah.
It feels like we are completely trapped inside our own evolutionary hardware. Are we just doomed to repeat this cycle of conflict forever?
When you look only at the machinery of prejudice, it can absolutely feel insurmountable. But the research points toward very tangible, optimistic interventions.
Really?
Yes, we can disrupt the machinery. The most established method is intergroup contact.
Okay.
Building actual relationships, sharing goals, and expressing empathy across group lines physically reduces the cognitive tendency toward prejudice. Acknowledging the past suffering of an outgroup is profoundly effective in reconciliation.
So empathy basically acts as a wrench in the gears of the bias machine.
Exactly.
But practically speaking, what if someone lives in a highly segregated area? What if they don't have the opportunity to directly interact with diverse groups on a daily basis?
This is where the flexibility of the human brain becomes our greatest asset. A fascinating 2009 study by Crispin Turner revealed that you do not even need real-world contact to begin dismantling prejudice.
What do you mean?
They studied the effects of simply imagining a positive social interaction with members of an outgroup.
Wait, just imagining it. Like I could sit in my living room, close my eyes, and mentally visualize having a constructive, positive conversation with someone from a group I hold a stereotype against, and that actually rewires my brain.
It leverages neuroplasticity. When participants actively visualized positive interactions, it significantly reduced the anxiety they felt regarding intergroup contact, and it measurably decreased their implicit prejudice.
That is wild.
The brain's effective response, the prejudice, is often rooted in the fear of the unknown. By running a positive simulation, you lower the emotional threat level. The brain literally learns that the outgroup is not inherently dangerous.
That is incredible. So I'm stepping out of the student role for a second to synthesize what we've uncovered here because the implications are massive.
Go for it.
Bias is not just a handful of cartoonishly evil people making conscious decisions to cause harm. It is a quiet, cognitive chain reaction happening in all of us. It starts with a thought to save processing power, a stereotype. That thought gains an emotional charge and becomes prejudice. And that prejudice dictates our behavior, resulting in discrimination.
And left unchecked, our minds will utilize self-fulfilling prophecies and confirmation bias to ensure we never have to question the validity of those original thoughts, using scapegoating to protect our fragile egos along the way.
But the machinery is not invincible.
No, it's not.
By shining a light on how our implicit biases operate, by understanding that our brain is constantly running those two sets of books, we can consciously choose to interrupt the cycle.
We can bypass the cognitive shortcuts and choose to engage with the reality of the individual in front of us.
We finally have the instruction manual for that invisible sorting machine in our heads. And for you listening right now, we want to leave you with a thought to carry into your day. We know your brain is constantly automatically seeking confirmation for its hidden stereotypes. It's an accountant cooking the books. So what would happen if, for just one single day, you actively tried to look for evidence that contradicts your first impression of every stranger you meet?
If you intentionally jam the gears of your own confirmation bias.
How much of your reality would shift? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the machinery of your own mind, and keep exploring the world around you.